Hi, good evening, everybody. This is Bill Graham coming to you live from Model Railroading Live, the number one model railroading show in the world, if not the universe. Tonight, Who's Big Bill talking to? We have a special guest. Most of you guys tuning in already probably know who it is that we have. But before I introduce him and bring him on and start our little chat, I just have some homework I have to take care of. And then we'll be heading right over to, what's his name? The guy sitting next to me. But anyway, just want to give you guys a heads up that November is a chock full of video month for us. We will be having tomorrow night on the 5th of November, we're going to have Johnny's Train Talk Show. He'll be coming on at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All the shows are at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Johnny's Train Talk Show will be on. That's where you, the viewer and part of the community, can come in and be a part of the show. You can if your camera and you have good internet, you can be on the show. Just click on the link, and you'll be more than happy to be welcomed into the Johnny's Train Talk Show. You can bring and brag if you have something you built, something you want to show off, or something you just want to, show everybody. And if you have a problem with anything on model railroading, whether it be electrical, track-wise, car-wise, anything, there's a plethora of guys out there who definitely know what they're talking about. And if they don't know, we can find out and get back to you. So Johnny's Train Talk Show tomorrow, Thursday, November 5th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then on November 7th, we got Empire Builders. They're back. Railroad Empires, I should say. They're back. Robert Holloman and the gang will be coming back and premiering a new show, a new format, and a new way of doing things on Railroad Empires. Something new, something different, and definitely something intriguing. And that's going to be on the 7th of November at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And they will be premiering their show, and then they'll be back on the 21st of November. So stay tuned for that. And let's see, what else do we have up in store in our little grab bag of model railroading tidbits? I think that's about it, actually. Just said my battery's sufficiently charged. Isn't that wonderful? I love when that happens and everything. Let's see if I can get this to unlock and go to never. Bear with me as I deal with this, and then I will come back to this and be a part of everything. So here we are. Oh, and I got to turn down the sound, because what happens when you don't turn down the sound? Everybody's in. I see. Well, Who's Big Bill talking to? A couple of weeks ago, I had the distinct honor and pleasure of being on a show with Heath, Human City. And I thought that I would turn the tables and have him on my show. And we were thinking about doing the waterboarding and the electric shocks, but I don't know. So John said that wouldn't be a good idea.
A little bit of flogging.
Yeah, a little flogging and stuff like that, but it didn't.
Yeah.
It's model railroading. It's not brain surgery. So.
Yeah.
Tonight's guest on our show, Who's Big Bill talking to, is Heath from Human City Junction. Welcome, Heath.
Thanks, Bill, so much for having me. It's good to be on the other side of the table, and hopefully I'll have some good stories for you tonight.
Well, I have to say, you have definitely been making the rounds. Every time I go on YouTube to check out new videos and stuff, lo and behold, what do I see? You doing a podcast, you interview, you hosting your live show. You're out there, man.
When you're on a roll, you got to kind of take advantage of it. I don't want to lose the momentum. But yeah, it's been good. I got to be on the MRYCG podcast, which was a lot of fun. He did an Over the Pond episode.
I listened to that the other night. I thought that was very good.
Yeah, and it was good. And actually, even Sparky had me on a little earlier tonight, so I was hanging out with him for a little bit. And
were you live? I mean, were you? Oh, were you on camera?
Yeah, on Sparky's Wednesday, I came up in the beginning, talked to him for a little bit. But yeah, and then this weekend we've got Sidetrack Sunday, so I'll be doing hosting my own stream on Sunday and just enjoying it, having fun.
As my sainted grandfather would say, you're like horse manure. You're spread all over the.
I don't smell as bad though, or at least hopefully I don't smell as bad.
No, but you're out there. That's good. I have to say that the first time I came across your channel, if my good friend Wilma, Indian Head Valley Railroad, doesn't snag up anybody first, but I'm sure he probably got you way before I did. But I remember coming across your channel and seeing Human City Junction, and then you appearing, and at the time I had no idea that you were a fellow New Yorker that lived not too far.
Yeah, I don't have the same accent as you. I don't have that New York accent.
I have an accent?
No, not at all. Not at all.
I think John's got the accent.
Yeah.
Everybody else has got it. I don't understand it. But anyway, I saw you on the channel, and I thought it was like, hey, this is pretty good. And I thought when I first saw your opening intro, I thought you were going to be like one of those subway guys, that do the subway.
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be interesting. He's going to ride on the subway. He's going to do this. And he's going to do that. And then you came on, and you had this whole T-track module corner thing that you were working on, and I was like, oh, wait, this is different. This is way, way different. And then you went into the whole N scale thing, and you went into the whole scenery and I was like, wow, wait, this. And then you mentioned, I didn't really get a sense that you were in Manhattan until you did the thing with the Amtrak.
Yep.
That ran by your apartment.
Yeah.
And then you were out on your bike, tracking it down all the way up to the bridge, up to the George Washington Bridge. And then that's when I realized, and I reached out to you, and we connected by phone, and we had like a marathon telephone conversation, and you were just starting out, and you were asking about getting subs, and we were talking about the work that's got to go into it. And here, lo and behold, what are you up to, 670 subs now?
Yeah, I think it was, last I checked, it was, I think, 670. It looks like it's 671 right now.
Now
it's been fun.
We talked the other night on Monday, and it was 666. So in that time from Monday until now, it's jumping in leaps and bounds. That's got to say a lot.
Well, I was actually stuck for a while. I was between 662 and 664 for about a week and a half. And then all of a sudden I got up to 666. And then Digger Evans was like, we can't leave you at 666. So he posted up my link on one of his social media groups and got me a couple subs to get myself off of 666. And now I'm up at 671. So
congratulations.
Yeah, I'm playing the game a little bit, but I also just enjoy doing the videos. So
now, model railroading for you, was that something that was instilled in you as a kid growing up? I mean, it was something that the family did as a dad, or?
Yeah, I mean, I do vividly remember my dad setting up some O-scale trains in the basement of our house in Mansfield, Ohio. And then, my first train set, though, as far as I remember, was HO scale. And when I was in my, middle school age, my dad had O scale and G scale on one side of the basement, and I had an HO scale layout on the other side of the basement. And, that was kind of the start of it, but it was so different. I mean, we would go to Greenberg train shows, and we would see stuff there. And we went to like a couple club type of things, but for the most part, you didn't have any connection to any other model railroaders. You were kind of,
Yeah. What
off on your own.
year was this? What year was this?
Early 80s.
Okay, so right, early '80s. That was on the. We were on the early '80s. We were on the cusp of DCC. It was just around the corner. They were talking about it, and they were saying this is what the price was going to be, and it was like everything, like when calculators first came out, you couldn't get a calculator for like less than $1,000, and now look, you can go to Staples and they give them away, for nothing.
I hadn't heard of DCC until like February, March of 2020. So I didn't even know about it back then at all. So
it was the talk of the because I was still modeling right up until 80, 82, 83, and then I got a promotion on my job, and then it took me away from doing my modeling. But I remember I would get the Model Railroad magazine, and there'd be a few articles, teaser articles on this new thing called DCC and what it was going to do and how it was going to do it. So yeah, and then back then in the YouTube wasn't invented back then. So we had no idea,
I had no idea. I mean, I'd get the magazines and I'd look at the pictures and stuff, but back then I didn't really know what I was doing. I basically had a layout of multiple just loops, with some switches between them so I could switch tracks. But I thought like that's what it was loops. I knew nothing about operations or, even really scenery or any of that kind of stuff. So it's very different. The amount of information available and what you can learn from people, and yeah, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, now we know that the Earth is flat.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And what's the other? That nobody landed on the moon in 1969.
Right. Yep. And anybody that's still using DC and analog, I mean, they're just old school, right?
Well, then they're reptilians.
Yeah. I know Ray just posted that he's still analog, so I thought I'd give him a little bit of a hard time. But
yeah, well, Ray, we are in the 21st century. Wait, hold on. Oh, yes, it's the 21st century. Calling to tell you that as I say with my flip phone.
Nice. You gotta love the flip phones.
Ray, I'm only breaking your shoes. I still love you, and that's only because I owe you money.
Yeah, he'll give you a discount.
Yeah. Hey, CB. So okay. Almar is online. How you doing, Ray? How you doing, Al? Haven't seen you. Fred Wiles on. Fred will be on later in the month.
Awesome.
Yeah, Fred. And Container Man 68, hello. He says the moon is made of cheese.
It is. Unfortunately, I'm lactose intolerant, so when I travel to the moon on my vacations, I can't partake of the cheese, but it is still nice to see.
There you go. So then you grew up in a household where your dad was doing G scale, you were doing HO scale, and then you discovered women, girls. And,
more like I went to college in New York City, and there were no trains in the college dorms. That's for sure.
No. What college did you go to in New York City?
Went to NYU.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I say it was more a lesson in life than it was a lesson in any sort of education.
Okay.
There were definitely a lot of distractions being in New York City in the early 90s.
Yes.
But I made it out in one piece. So
okay.
Yeah, it's all good.
Is that one of your deciding factor? I mean, after college, did you go back home?
I didn't. I actually ended up staying here. I got some, just sort of hourly work and just kind of stayed around and just kept working my way up at different jobs and, worked my way all the way up to where I am now.
Okay. So in that interim of like college, when you were in college and you graduated, obviously, and you got a job, you were working, and then at any point in that time, did the bug hit you to say, hey, I used to do this model railroading thing. I'd really like to get back into it.
I did actually. As a single man when I was living in Queens, I had a G-scale train that ran around the outside of my living room. I think that was actually maybe, no, it wasn't my first, but it was close to my first sort of circus train. I found an LGB circus train, and I was like, oh, I got to get this, and just sort of ran it around the living room.
Okay. So that was the second taste of model railroading.
Yeah, probably. It seems to be one of those hobbies that sort of comes and goes. When you have space, it seems to magically show up, and then life changes and it disappears a little bit, and then somehow it just sort of drags you back, and
just when you think you're out of it, yeah, you back in.
Just when you think you're growing up and no longer need to play with trains, it drags you back in.
Yeah. So how did you arrive to where you are now?
So for a long time, I worked in theater, and so like being in New York City and working in theater, it's kind of a good place to be. It was a stagehand, so I worked backstage, and it just sort of ended up here. Like I wouldn't so much say it was planned as it was more just sort of where life carried me. And when I started the train stuff again, I just didn't have the space. Like I dream of the basement I grew up with, and maybe one day I'll have the basement, the size that I grew up with. But for now, it's the T-Track modules have been great. It's a great way to model when you don't have a lot of space. And you had GFW on not too long ago, and I'm talking to George about getting a T-Track module, because when he goes off to college, I'm like, you should, build this module, bring it with you to school. So I think it's a good way to kind of keep the modeling going when you don't have a lot of space.
Yeah, Grandpa Rail says back in the day, the Boy Scouts had a magazine called Boys Life, and they always had good articles on model rail. You're absolutely right. When I was a Boy Scout, I used to get that, and you're right. It was. You used to look at the pictures and say, "Wow, I wonder how they get that to do that." I'd want to.
Yeah.
John 2618, John Farrington just turned into the room. Hello, John. And so now, how did you come upon T-Track? I mean, you're out of the hobby. You did it seems like you did the LGB thing, the railroad. So now, how did you finding T-Track and N-Scale? I mean, you knew N-Scale was there, but how did you?
I knew N-Scale. I had very, very few N-Scale trains from back in the 80s. I think like we had gotten like a kit for a loop or something, and I had acquired Pennsylvania Railroad set of passenger cars and Amtrak set of passenger cars in N-Scale. So I definitely had some N-Scale stuff. The girlfriend in December of 2019 said, can we, let's set up a Christmas tree this year. And I said, can I put a train around it? And at the time I thought I'd just make a loop. And next thing you know, after watching, Luke Talwin and Mark Luna Sweden, I was like, oh, I want to try these scenery ideas. So it just sort of took off from there, and I got the bug, and I started using AnyRail 6, and I was designing these like huge layouts, and I was like, oh, like if I could, like maybe I can figure out a way to do like a 6x8 layout or something. And the more I just kept looking at it, it was like, this is just never going to work. And I was avoiding.
Excuse me, you have to explain to our friends outside the city. Anybody west of Newark, New Jersey, that Keith lives on the Upper West Side, and he lives in an apartment.
Yes.
And he lives on top of each. How many floors are in your apartment house?
29.
29. And what floor are you on?
14.
He's on the 14th. He has a lovely view, I would imagine. So, and his apartment, how many square feet?
750-ish.
Right. Okay. 7. So you have to, guys, remember, he's dealing with very limited amount of space.
Yeah. And, I mean, one of the things I've been enjoying doing is on Friday mornings, I've been kind of doing an informal stream where I set up my loop of T-Track modules. And you can kind of see, like, that's, I'm setting them up, and that's the whole apartment. And I have to take them down because, they take even just the loop of T-Track modules, take up the whole apartment.
You have a 6-foot table you use, right? Or
it's 2-foot by 4-foot folding tables. Okay. Because I wanted something small. Basically, my desk is 30 inches by 50 inches, and I raise it up, and the tables and all the modules and stuff go underneath, and some of the trains go in the closet and stuff, and everything basically goes away. And I try and keep the workbench clear so I can work on stuff. But yeah, it's not all this. The interesting thing though is that having the space limitations has actually required me to be more creative.
Okay. Yes. Sparky 107 says the floor is 14th. That is not really floor 13. One day.
It is actually really 13.
Right. He says, is that why everything is Heath's fault?
That's actually very funny, Sparky. I do technically live on the 13th floor.
And Fred Wild says my basement is bigger. Steve 87th PSAP says my garage is bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. This is Manhattan. This is New York. So now you store it away, but also is it, well, obviously you wouldn't keep it out. Well, if you were a single man and you were by yourself, I'm sure that maybe you would occasionally putting it away. But since you're living with your significant other, you have to be cognizant of her.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a compromise, working out the space, because model railroading is not even in N scale, it takes up space.
Yes.
So it's definitely been, conversations about how to kind of make it work. And I think we found something that's, working for both of us for the most part. But yeah, I mean, one day maybe.
One day. But and one of the things you said that is interesting, he says you have to be more creative.
Yeah.
How have you found that to be? How have you found that to be challenging, but yet rewarding at the same time?
I didn't think I would like T-track modules. I thought that they would just be way too limiting. And I really was resistant to them for a long time. But what I'm finding is by having this sort of little diorama that you're building, basically, you can try things and you can experiment in ways that you wouldn't experiment if you had built a huge layout. Because you don't, when you've got a big layout, it's like you don't want to, we all mess things up, we all rip things up and start over. But with the T-track module, if something doesn't work out, it's a foot, it's a little foot section or something. It's
right
easier.
Right.
So I can be as creative as I want. I can try things. I can, the first module I did, I wired it up in this in one way, and then I got some other modules and wired them up in a different way, and I get to experiment and try different things.
What is the most challenging part of an idea that you at 2:00 in the morning, you're like, okay, I want to do this, but then in reality, how is that challenging?
Yeah, there is the challenge that everything kind of gets put away. This background behind me here is a movable divider, and I actually push it right up against the desk. So if I do kind of get the urge at 2 a.m. in the morning to do something, things aren't just sort of out. I can't just walk over to the bench and do stuff. So it is different that way, but you figure it out. You make it work.
Yeah, John 2618 says experimental layouts are great before you build a permanent one.
Yeah, and I'm really taking that approach with my current modules. Is I'm trying to experiment as much as possible. Push it a little bit further than I would if it was a permanent layout, just to try different things and see what I can come up with. Yeah, so it's been good. I mean, this first module, I had no idea what I was doing. So, it was all new. And now, though, when I move on to the next one, I have all this, information and stuff that I can, either use the same technique or different techniques on the next one and keep going.
Yeah, I'm just coming to that. Kent S. he wants to know, does T-track or N-track module use standard track or an easy track type system?
Yeah, so N-track is technically a module that's got its own feet on it, and it uses just regular Atlas or Pico track. T-Track is a module that's designed to sit on top of a table. So it's got little adjustable, like bolts or whatever as feet that you would then sit on a folding table. And T-Track uses Kato Unitrack as its standard. There are people that will build T-Track modules with other track, but then at the ends, they just have to make sure that they are within standard. So N-Track has 3 main rails. T-Track has 2 main rails. Then there's something called Fremon that's got 1 main rail, and they're all kind of different. I ultimately went with T-Track because I joined an N-Track club that at like Amherst, they'll bring their N-Track modules. But when they have a club meeting out here in Brooklyn, they bring T-Track modules because they're smaller and easier to transport.
That N-scale modeling in Brooklyn, are they the ones in Marine Park?
Yes. Yep.
No. Yes, I know some of the guys there.
Yeah, exactly.
Small
yeah,
world.
And I happened to meet him. I went up to Amherst last year, and I was wandering around and like everywhere. Amherst is just incredible. Like you think you've seen it all, and then there's like a whole nother section of stuff. So I walked back there and I saw some guys wearing Southern New Jersey shirts. So I started talking to them about being in New York, and they were like, "Oh, the guys at the other end of the table are in Brooklyn." So I met them through that.
Have you ever gone to their club meet?
I went to one of their meetings in Marine Park. Lately, everything's kind of been online.
Yes.
I really want to. I actually need to call the guy back. There's a model train club in New Jersey that's got a pretty big N scale layout, and I have to call the guy back. But that'll be sort of my permanent layout club. When I want to run longer trains, I'll go there. Strobe
Light Audio wants to know, how about a shelf layout around the room, or would the girlfriend not go for that either?
That is the answer.
That is the answer.
Yeah, no, I actually did build a shelf layout first. I went to Home Depot, bought a shelf. It did like a little switching layout on it. But what I realized after I had made that is that I really want to be able to run stuff. I like running trains, and having the shelf layout, I couldn't like take it somewhere and hook it up to other people's modules, that I needed to comply with some standards. So I sort of rethought everything and went to the T-Track. But I had some false starts. I built a double deck kind of loop thing that I thought like, oh, if I have like a loop on a 2 foot by 2 foot piece of wood, and I had 2 loops kind of, and I'd build a mountain that I could run 2 trains on it. But 2 foot by 2 foot, didn't really work well. And, the T-Track modules have by far been the most sort of successful experiment so far.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Sparky 107 wants to know, what is the chalkboard behind you, and who writes the messages on it most of the time?
Yeah. So it's actually not a chalkboard. It's actually just a canvas print. We have a pit bull, and I just really like pit bulls. And this used to be hanging in our living room on the wall, but we redecorated. And I kind of thought, oh, this is kind of a nice colorful background. I like colorful things, and I said, why don't I put that up as my background for my stream? So yeah, it's just a print on the wall.
Dwight of Northern Star says, in Fargo, North Dakota, a 4-bedroom house is $350,000. In New York City, it's over $500,000 to $1 million. I would have to say maybe just even a little more.
Yeah, I was going to say, Dwight, for a 4-bedroom, your numbers are way off. Way off. Yeah.
Dwight also says, I like T-Track clubs. We have one near my house. What large layouts they have? Yes, they do.
And it's fun too, because you can kind of work at home by yourself and build your thing, but then you can take it with you and share it with others at the clubs. One thing that I found interesting about the YouTube thing is that in the UK and stuff, they all build like exhibition layouts.
Yes.
They all build these layouts, these take place, and we don't really do that here in the US. We all have our, our basements or our garages or whatever, and we make our layouts that we don't then really share with people.
No, we don't. It's one of the things. I think on the other night we were talking, and I had gone to a regional meet at the Marine Corps League out here in Staten Island, and it was a clinic, and then you did a round robin 6 layouts in Staten Island. And it turned out that 2 of the guys lived like not too far from where I am, and I had seen them. I seen them locally in the Dunkin' Donuts in the supermarket. And here I realized one guy's got the entire Pennsylvania Railroad in his basement in 1930 steam, the whole 9 yards. And I'm like, tend to stay by yourself. And
we're an odd group of people, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, we are a bit of it. Some of us, not me, of course. I talk to an Indian. But Ray Bobel says I'm not really a marathon kind of talker.
I was wondering if you saw that comment from earlier.
Yeah, no, I did. I did. But yeah, we are. We tend to. And I think that was the whole premise. I think YouTube has brought us out of the basement.
Definitely. Yeah.
It has, and even now with the pandemic, we don't have to get tested. We don't have to wear masks. We can be online and we can still communicate with each other. I know Sparky had some things, lined up to do down in Lancaster,
Strasbourg, yeah,
canceled and everything, and that's a disappointment. But again, this too shall pass, as they say, and we hopefully will be back on, online and on track, pun intended, and stuff like that. So Heath, in starting your channel, what was the genesis of starting your channel? I mean,
unemployment.
That's a good. That's
yeah. So my last job was as a project manager doing audiovisual events, large scale AV events. And when all this stuff started, I said, it's going to be, 2 months or so that I'll be out of work. So, let me learn about this YouTube stuff, learn more about the online stuff. And then in 2 months, I'll just, go back to work and whatever. It's 8 months later. I'm still working on a YouTube channel. But yeah, ultimately it was kind of this thing of we're going to be stuck at home and online is going to become a much bigger part of our lives. And I did it. I was into the model train stuff before that started. I started my first T-Track module before, this started here in the US. So that was already happening. And then the YouTube thing was really about just learning. Like I wanted to learn. And then unfortunately I met a couple people and now I can't get rid of them. They, follow me around and all that kind of stuff. And now I've got friends all over the place and, friends in the UK and Australia and Canada. And, so it's really grown way beyond what I expected, much beyond what I expected. Yeah.
Who were your big influences? Who were your big influences first in model railroading?
Sparky 107 says that I have to say that it's him. He said if I didn't say that he was my big influence, that he'd come hunt me down. No.
Well, thank God he can't get across the border.
I know, right? Who are my big influences in model railroading? I have influences in model railroading on YouTube, but I don't know that I really have influences in model railroading outside of YouTube. Like one of the things I mentioned on the MRYCG podcast is I mentioned the show Silver Spoons. Right. And it was probably like a 7.5 inch or 7.25 inch, railroad that ran right into the center of their living room. And like, that was something that I was like, oh, if I could have that, like, that would be like the penultimate thing. And I kept, dreaming about building houses with, railroads that would go from room to room just because of that sitcom. But I don't know that I really, like, growing up or anything, had any sort of like HO or N scale, influences as far as that stuff goes. Now that I'm older, there's I forget what it's called. Oh, Miniature Wonderland in Germany. Here in New York, we had something called Gulliver's Gate for a little while, which was similar but a little bit smaller. And I went to that, and I loved it. I thought it was great, and that, I think, a little bit was what sort of triggered things to start going, that got me back into it again.
I got interviewed for a job there.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's funny you say that. I thought about applying there. I'm kind of glad I didn't now, because they went out of business. But I thought, like, how fun would that be to have somebody pay me to play with model trains all day?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But then I went for the interview, and it was going to be good money, But I had just retired, and I really wasn't looking to work. So
yeah, like, if they would have hired you for a day or two a week, it would have been one thing. But
that's what
they probably wanted you full time. Yeah,
right. I was kind of looking for that, and my expertise. I really, I told the guy I'm a novice modeler, and but you're a New Yorker, and you get a different perspective, and so it was all good, and stuff. Let's see here. Kay, have you seen any one modeling UK, United Kingdom steam and N scale in the US, thinking about making a World War II era UK layout?
I have seen people in the UK modeling N scale US. I don't think I've ever seen anybody in the US modeling UK stuff. I think that's kind of interesting. Yeah, I don't know that I have.
Ralph Renzetti says some guys have set up their layouts for remote operations.
It's interesting. He says that one of the things I've done with my T-Track modules is every main line on every module is on a separate block. And one of the things that I sort of, envision doing would be setting it up so that you could remotely operate it. But then I sort of think about it, and I'm kind of like, all it's going to do is go in a circle. So, what's the point of remote operations for a circle? But I do kind of want to play with the technology of it. I do think it's, it's easy enough to set up a, VPN to let somebody, onto my JMRI computer and then run trains. I think that would be fun.
Martin out of the UK recently ran a remotely from the UK in Minnesota. He ran the passenger train, so it didn't have to do operations. It was just a run through.
Interesting.
From Australia in Minnesota, I believe. So it was pretty interesting. It was on the NMRAX, I believe. Ralph Renzetti said to me that, wrong, Bill, it is easier for Canadians to cross than Americans. So be on the lookout. He might show up at your door.
Unfortunately, he's the one working and I'm the one not working, so it's more likely I would have to travel to him. But
James Braxton asked, "How about your father?"
So my father definitely got me into it. He definitely brought the O scale trains out, and he still has his original. I don't know if it's his original. It's the original O scale railroad that that I saw when I was a kid. And he'd bring me to all the Greenberg shows and stuff like that. And we still talk about the train stuff. He doesn't have any trains set up right now. He still has stuff. He's got a crawl space, and it's all stored in the back of the crawl space. And I actually went down there. I don't remember when I went down there, maybe February, March. I don't remember, but I went down there and I got all my old train stuff and brought it up here. And, so we talk about it and chat about it. But I think both of us, to some extent, were, in the dark. We didn't have the relationships to people that really knew what they were doing, I guess, or thought they knew what they were doing. So we were all just sort of, figuring it out as we went along.
Well, I don't think anybody has if you talk to Miles Hale,
right,
who I think is a premier modeler and a premier builder on stuff, he'll tell you all the time. Not bad for a physical educations teacher. and that's what he did in his previous life.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yes. So his degree is in teaching. And I don't think that any of us become good at what we do. Like, I don't think we're born into it where mom and dad say, oh, this is what you're going to be, and this is how you're going to do it, and we're going to train you in it. I think it's a passion that you come to pick up, and there's so much involved in model railroading and the art of model railroading. I think my own personal opinion is I think that we always put a piece of ourselves into it, and we always want to learn, and we always want to. I think your situation is like, I think it's so ripe for when you go on to something, when you move, and
Yep.
eventually you will, and to something bigger, something better, something more suitable for
I
you.
think part of it was growing up where we grew up and seeing what we saw is we didn't necessarily know what was possible. And I think that
Right.
that's one thing that YouTube has really given us is, I mean, good and bad, is, it's possible to build a shelf layout. It's possible to, fill your basement up with trains. But, back then, I would have had no idea that a shelf switching layout was even a possibility.
Sure.
So.
But again, it wasn't. YouTube didn't introduce it, and
Yeah.
it wasn't there, so you were limited to what you knew, and what magazine came through.
I probably needed to read the magazines a little closer.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see. Pirates of the model trains. Pirates of the model trains. Well, welcome aboard, Pirates of the Model Train. I don't think you're new here to the MRL channel. Welcome aboard. When you are able to build, the question is, when you are able to build your dream layout, will it be based on a prototype or freelance? And would you do prototype operations?
It's definitely going to be more freelance. My sort of dream layout, I guess, to some extent, would be New York Central-ish, Pennsylvania Railroad-ish. And I would build it where, like, the circus would come to town. They would set up, unload everything, and let's say it was somewhere upstate that they would unload everything, and then they would pack it all up. They'd, reconnect the train, and they'd, come into the city. They'd go over the Hell's Gate Bridge, come into the city, and then they'd set up the circus, in the old Madison Square Garden amphitheater or something like that. So
Right.
It would take, my idea is to take ideas from when the circus traveled by rail, and sort of base things on some sort of real places and whatever for influence. But ultimately, it would just be a freelance. Ralph is saying proto-lance. Yeah, I guess proto-lance is probably the best way to put it. It's like, I run engines with the lights off. I put cabooses on SD70 Aces. I kind of do whatever I want.
Well, yeah, Ralph also comments on the earlier statement. He says, Bill, the learning thing is why our layouts are never done. We're always learning ways to improve our skills, which is so very true. Very true. The internet, Kent S. says, the internet has been amazing now that I'm getting back into the hobby. I modeled in the early 90s and didn't have much information. Now, since you're doing your YouTube thing and you've come onto the scene, the question I have for you is, who is one of your biggest influences, and who is somebody that you saw, or some people that you saw on YouTube that you were like, hey, that looks interesting? Who were those influences?
I mean, it's kind of like I almost hate to say them because it's like everybody says them, but my 2019 Christmas layout would not have happened if it wasn't for Luke Towan and Merklin of Sweden. It's like those sort of channels in the, Merklin of Sweden had this use tissue paper to make water or tissues or whatever. So it's like, oh, I'm going to, it's cheap. Tissue paper, some paint, some glue. I made some water. I didn't need to go out and pour epoxy and like do all this kind of stuff. And so it was just sort of, simple and attainable. And even, Luke Towan was doing some videos that I saw that I felt were somewhat sort of attainable as far as static grass and building sort of some landscape and stuff like that. So that was kind of my initial sort of thing. Now I try and watch what I can, and I just, I learn what I can really from everybody. I think even some of the people coming out, Steve Childers is a great example. I think he's got like 51 subs or something like that, but he's been doing all these really interesting sort of little, short little tidbit videos. And he's been model railroading for a long time, but he hasn't been YouTubing for a long time. So like, he's got some really great information. So I don't think it's necessarily the size of the channel. I think it's just being open to, I was going to say, stealing ideas from everywhere.
No, it basically is. You're basically taking something from somebody. I go by the old adage that on my roofs, I put this is cut sandpaper and paint them black, and people say, "Hey, can I use that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I took it from somebody else."
On my first module, I saw somebody put, I think it's the skateboard stuff that you stick down on a skateboard or whatever. I just cut a piece of that up and put it on my building top as a roof. And it's like, I wouldn't have thought of it myself, but I saw somebody do it and I was like, hey, let's see what I can find, and found something and gave it a shot. So
yeah, Ralph Renzetti says, my kind of operator.
Yeah. Having circus trains, it's already so sort of.
I'm gonna ask you that next question. What is the attraction to the circus train?
One, I think they're just really colorful and really beautiful. So I think they're just really interesting. But I also think it was a time in America's history before the internet where if you wanted to see an elephant, they had to bring the elephant to you. So it was like, you weren't going to see somebody flying a trapeze unless they brought it to you.
Right.
And I think it's really amazing that they would, lash up all these cars together and they'd go from one city to another and they'd set these tents up. And it's quite an eclectic group of people that work for a circus.
Yes.
But yet they all come together to create this really magical and, at the time, very educational experience for people. I mean, the animal menagerie was basically a traveling zoo. People would see giraffes and hippos and stuff that they've never seen before. So I think between sort of the people that make the circus what it is and the experience it brought, to the people of various cities, I think it's an interesting time in American culture. And I want to learn more about it and kind of honor it in my modeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's, I think the colors are fun. I like the bright red colors of things. I like all that stuff. And everybody remembers seeing their first circus, whether it's because you were afraid of the clown or whether it's because you loved the circus. I think, everyone, at least, like around my age, I mean, obviously, 10-year-old kids today probably have never seen a circus because they just watch things on YouTube. But I think a lot of, people of my age group and older or whatnot remember when the circus came to town. It was an event.
Yeah, it certainly was. I mean, I know when Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus would come to New York, they'd always they'd march the elephants from the rail,
from the Sunnyside
right.
Or Hunters Point. Sorry, not Sunnyside, Hunters Point. Yep. They'd park at Hunters Point. They'd walk the elephants through the tunnel into the thing. Yeah. And it's a catch-22 a little bit because, we know more now than we used to. So I have a little bit of this, thing about like, was it good to have tigers in cages traveling by train and, putting them in a ring and making them do tricks and stuff like that, versus that, if we never did that, people would never knew they existed. So there's definitely this, I think, give and take that we need to sort of think about it. But you know, there's also the people, though. I mean, the aerialists and the acrobats and the clowns and the people that made the circus as well were an interesting group.
Yeah. If in the possible future, if you did obtain space and able to redo and model your layout, would you change scales?
What I think I would ideally do is there's a lot more N scale circus stuff than there is HO scale circus stuff. And I think I have most of everything in both those scales. I would probably do N scale for the operations, the more like having the circus come to town and leave town and that sort of thing. But I think I would have HO as well, just to sort of show off the cars. I believe they're all Walthers. I'll pull them out on Sunday. But Walthers made a sort of a set of a bunch of cars honoring the circus, and they're all different circuses and stuff. And I just think it's good to show that stuff, just to get it out there so people can ask questions and see it. So I want to kind of do both. I definitely want to do both.
James Bracton says he had the privilege to work with them.
Yeah. James, which circus did you work for? I tried to type that, but I hit completely the wrong buttons. But yeah, Joey, I'm a huge fan of Cirque du Soleil. I think, when they got rid of the animals and then sort of, I think it's amazing, right? Like I've met some of the performers in shows like Cirque du Soleil and other shows, and they're like they're regular people. They put their pants on the same way we do and everything. But then you go see these shows and you're like, it's impossible for a human being to do that. Like, human beings just can't do that. But they obviously can, because they are, and they do it, 8 times a week or whatever. And I think it kind of makes you realize you're mortal on one hand, and then it makes you realize that you can do so much more on the other hand, right? Like there's, you can push your body to a certain point and it's not going to break.
Right.
But you have to just be willing to get out of your comfort zone.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's the more philosophical side of circus for me, is that it's a place where people push their bodies and themselves to the limits, so that you can experience what it's like to just sort of forget about everything and just, be really in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, sorry, I got a little philosophical.
No, that was very interesting. That was very interesting.
Yeah, that's partly too why I think, I think the emotional draw that a lot of us have to model trains. I mean, you ask people like, what do you model? And they're like, oh, well, when I grew up, this train used to go past my house, so that's what I model. And I think there's this very visceral attraction to a lot of the things that we model or that we want to experience and then share with others.
Grandpa Rail says that his oldest daughter used to perform with a circus troupe.
That's so awesome.
Oh, yeah.
That's really awesome.
COVID has caused circuits. Yes.
Yeah. Without getting into too many details about it, the issue is that after 6 months, anybody that's furloughed either had to be rehired or laid off. So all of the Cirque employees and all the Cirque performers, were off work since March. So in September, when the 6 months were off, they either had to start doing shows again or they had to actually lay everybody off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was more just because of the way the laws are written that it kind of happened. And hopefully they'll be able to rebuild, because I think that they were doing some good things, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
Yeah. But I think what you're saying about your interaction with the circus and involved in your model railroad, that is so true. That's a part of your life that you saw, and you're integrating it into a railroad. It's the same with people who do, like on my, South Brooklyn layout. My connection to it is that I actually worked on it.
Yep.
So there's a personal connect there, and that's something that that you relive it in some miniature form or whatever.
Yeah, and you're carrying it on. You're carrying it on to share with other people.
Yes, yes.
Kent, 2017 was when.
Oh, whoa, Heath.
Yeah,
who shows this?
I know. I'm sorry. I forget which side of the table I'm on. I don't. Just.
Me, we're gonna have to come up there.
Are you blaming me?
I'm gonna have to come up there, and I'm gonna have to give you such a slap. I'm gonna have to give you such a slap. All right, well, let's start over. Heath S. When did circus trains end, Heath?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, I think it was 2017 that the last Ringling Brothers circus train ran. But at that point, it was only one train. They used to have 2 shows and stuff, so it was already kind of dwindling when it happened.
Right.
But yeah, it's been a little bit.
Do you think in your previous life you would have loved to join the circus and run away with them?
I may have run away with the circus in this lifetime, for all you know.
This is true.
Yeah, I actually grew up. I grew up juggling. For my 13th birthday party, my parents had jugglers come, and they had some tennis balls with lead shot in them, and I got 3 of the balls, and I learned to juggle, and juggled off and on most of my life. But I worked for the Big Apple Circus in 1996, I believe it was. I worked for about 8 months for them. So I was one of the guys that ran away with the circus. So
there you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
What did you do for the Big Apple?
So the lights would go out. I would run into the ring. I would grab whatever was in the ring, and I would run out, and then the lights would come back on. So basically, I was on the ring crew, is what they called it.
That was you?
Yeah. So I
recognized.
I was the guy running around in the dark
at Lincoln Center, right?
I actually did do it in Lincoln Center as well. Yeah, I got to roll the. They had those big tubs that the elephants stand up on top.
Right,
I got to learn how to roll one of those, and you'd be surprised. There's actually a technique to rolling something that is way heavier than you can actually lift on your own, and
right.
It was fun. It was a good experience. It was,
That's good. Let's see. Container Man 68 says, my hometown railroad that I grew up with ceased operations in the early 80s. Mopac with UP in 1982. The UP leased the line to Kansas and Oklahoma, which is now a dead-end line 15 miles west of me. And
so is Container Man going to model that railroad? I guess that's my question. He keeps threatening to build a model railroad, and I'm curious if that's what he's building.
Chantez says, wow, that's still a long run, though that ended in the 90s. Rocky 107, there are 2 of the circus train cars at Steamtown.
Yes, there are. Yep, there's a circus wagon, and there's a car.
CPC 1965.
Yeah.
You'll see juggle.
I don't have anything round.
I can't make anybody do anything.
Yeah.
Especially on video. So Fred Wild says you were a roadie.
I was. So I worked for the circus, came back to New York, worked in theater in New York for a while. A lot of people may have heard of the show Stomp, which is pretty popular. I worked there, worked at the Metropolitan Opera House. I've done some shows on Broadway. I was kind of, I've been a roadie. I've done my share of traveling, that's for sure. Not on a train, unfortunately, usually by plane, but
yeah. I have to tell you though, it's like 6 degrees of separation. I told you the other night, my brother's brother-in-law, Jim Stanford, he was a performer at the circus, at the Big Apple Circus, along with his wife. He was a clown and he was an acrobat. And I don't know when they stopped.
Yeah, I'd be so curious if we ran into each other. That'd be so interesting.
Yeah, at some point, because we used to, when they would do the show in Lincoln Center, he would give us, free tickets
to get in. Yeah,
go in. And said Dwight of Northern Star says, in the middle of Wisconsin, there is a circus museum. It's pretty neat.
Baraboo, Wisconsin, is the circus museum, and they've got some of the old Ringling cars.
Fred Wild, he says, Heath, I grew up in the theater. My father was a college theater teacher and a lighting designer.
Oh, it's really cool. Yeah,
Pirates
a
of
lot of
Modern.
the people I know are theater people. It just seems like we kind of we gravitate towards each other.
Yeah, it says here when you go to Tampa, you can eat in two of the circus dining cars and be
Oh,
by one of the Barnum and Bailey chefs. I
oh,
took
that's really cool.
Joey Buckzak. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. I took a year off performing arts in college. Before then, I didn't talk to anyone. Now I actually talk to people. Okay, yeah,
Uh,
but yeah, no, that's. I'm just saying because you said you worked in the Metropolitan Opera House. I used
I
to,
did.
as a motorman, I used to every afternoon. I used to take a guy that was a lighting director for the Metropolitan for the opera. He
Hmm.
used to run at Bay 50th Street, and he just knocked on the door one day and asked how hard it was to difficult it was to operate a train. And I was like, not hard at all. And then I said, what do you do? And he says, well, I work for the opera house in the Metropolitan
Yeah.
Opera. I said, what do you do? He says, I do lighting. I'm the lighting director. And I
Yeah,
was,
the Opera House is a machine, man. I mean, it's another example of, like a circus. I talked about all the people that come together to make a show. The Metropolitan Opera
yeah,
House is like that as well. I
yeah,
mean, the
yes, it's a
orchestra, the
city.
chorus people, the singers, all of the stagehands, it's
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
I find theater production to be pretty, especially down in what's that one in Sight and Sound in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Mm,
That theater down there, like the scenery stuff is just
yeah.
amazing that they bring in. Randall Ellis says most of my first fleet consist of the modern day BNSF, but I have quite an affinity for the Burlington Northern because of what I remember as a kid in the early '90s. Uh, Joey Buckzak, Heath, how many model circus stuff do you have? Sorry if you said
Yeah. So if you go online and you look up the Walther's HO Circus set, I have that whole set, which I don't remember how many cars there are, but again, we'll see them Sunday. And then the N scale stuff, if you look up Micro Trains Ringling Brothers, I've got most of them. There's probably about 10 or so that I don't have at this point, maybe 15 that I don't have at this point, but I've got pretty much the majority of that collection as well. And then I've got the G scale stuff as well, which Bachman had some Emmett Kelly cars, and LGB had, I forget what circus it was, but I've got probably more than I should.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
That's not a bad problem to have.
No, it's not. I just wish I had the space to run them all. I mean, I love collecting them, but even more so, I'd love to be showing them off.
Sure, I understand completely. Heath, thank you so very, very much for being a part of this show. Let everybody, what's your upcoming shows? Give us a rundown.
So I'll probably do an informal, just sort of something on Friday morning, just with everything going on. I usually just open up StreamYard and, just hang out or whatever with people. But then officially Sidetrack Sunday is on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. I am the second Sunday of every month. So Ray Boble, who's in chat, does the fourth. The Train Freak does the third, and John from Schuylkill River Valley does the first. And we do a rotating show Sunday nights. So sidetracksunday.com. You can go to blameheath.com as well. I've got some just sort of like regular merchandise t-shirts, but then I made some a whole Blame Heath series as well. And of course, just search Humanity Junction on YouTube or wherever, and you pretty much find me around. I'm around.
Joey, just a couple of more questions here before we close out. Joey Buzzak wants to know, do you have any circus structures?
I do actually. Well, they're not. Oh, I do have some circus structures. Yes, there's a German company whose name I'm not going to pronounce that has like circus tents. and a circus menagerie that I have. And then I've got a bunch of Faller, which is a German company, I believe. They have a bunch of carnival stuff. And I have a 2-foot by 16-inch module, and that's actually the next, might not be the next one, but I want to make that kind of my circus and carnival sort of module. So I want to build all those kits and put it on there.
And Sparky 107 wants to know, what is your favorite locomotive, favorite rail car besides circus trains?
I'm really enjoying, I just got 2 Kato locomotives, and I don't have like a fit. Like if somebody said, "Oh, do you like Alcos or do you like ST-78s or whatever?" Like I don't really have a particular that way. But I will say my favorite locomotives right now are my 2 Kato locomotives. I've got a GG1 Blackjack that Ray Boble actually turned me on to. It's just a beautiful GG1 locomotive. And then I was very lucky. The community actually, some of the members of the community got together and got me a Kato 1943 Spirit of the Union. I think it's called Spirit of the Union, honoring the armed forces, and that's a Kato ST-78, and that just blew me away. So those are probably my 2 favorite locomotives. My favorite rail car besides circus trains. Boy, I have no idea. I got some circus trains that I wanted to run for a Halloween special, and then I totally forgot about doing a Halloween special. So I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but they're kind of fun. So I don't.
Container Man 68 says, "Hey, bald human shirts might work too."
Yeah, that maybe I'll do that for my next series. We'll do bald human, but.
Yeah, bald human.
Yeah, it's been fun. The whole thing around YouTube, like with Teespring and Patreon and all those things, like learning about all of that and interacting with people in different ways, and kind of the Blame Heath thing sort of, started as a joke, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own. I'm sort of embracing the fun of it. I mean, I could look at it one way and get all upset about it and whatnot, but I also think it's kind of it's sort of a fun recognition thing, the way it's expanding.
Well, it's not. It wasn't done maliciously, was it?
No, not at all. It was a joke. I just told the story actually on Sparky's stream, but basically I was on with Tom's Trains and Things 1 week, and then the next week John with Schuylkill River Valley was supposed to get on, and he was having all these technical issues. And I still had my login from last week, and I was like, "Oh, let me try this." So I tried the login, and I got in. So I was like, "Hey, I can get in. It still works for me." And then they were like, "Yeah, John had just gotten in, but when you logged in, you kicked him off, and now he can't get back in." So it became this whole thing about like I messed up Tom's stream. So it was, blame Heath. So whenever there's a technical problem or something, the joke is, Heath must have screwed something up.
So basically, Heath, what you're saying is this whole election thing.
I'm not even getting. Let's not even go there. I had nothing to do with it. Nothing at all to do with it.
Well, thank you so much, Heath, for being a part of the show and taking time out of your busy schedule to come and be a part of this. Please tell your lovely girlfriend, thank her for letting you sit with us for an hour.
Will do. Will do. Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, no problem. Just to give you guys a heads up, tomorrow is Johnny's Train Talk Show on the 5th of November, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Johnny's Train Talk Show is where you, the viewer in the community, can come on and be part of the show. You can do a bring and brag, something that you've made, something that you want to discuss. You got a problem, whether it be electrical, engineering, or whatever. We have some of the brightest minds in model railroading on the show that can give you, if we have 6 guys on the panel, you'll get 8 different opinions.
Just 8? You'll probably get 20 different answers.
Yeah, probably, but we got them there. So please don't hesitate to join in. There's an open Q&A if you don't have an webcam and stuff like that. So you can ask your questions and be part of the show. And then the 7th, this Saturday, at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Let me go back to the old notes. Railroad Empires will be premiering this Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Robert Holloman and the crew. They'll be doing a new segment, a new show, and new series on model railroading, and that should be 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this September 7th. I want to take this opportunity to say to NASA and the space station, we were supposed to get you guys on to do the install on the Dakota, and we couldn't get you hooked up. I don't know. We can put a guy on the moon, but we can't seem to get hooked up with the Soviet astronaut just to put a simple decoder in and free gravity and stuff like that. I don't understand it. But anyway, and also, before I forget, and I don't want to overlook it, we are sorry to Rod Stewart. We were supposed to get you in after NASA, but due to time constraints and this interesting conversation with Heath of Human City Junction, we couldn't get him. We couldn't get you on, so our apologies. Maybe next show. Next, just before I close out here, on the 11th, we're going to have Eric Smith. Who's Big Bill talking to? Will be Eric Smith. He's the editor and of the OPSIG magazine, and he'll be on discussing OPSIG magazine operations and everything that has to do with operations and the magazine and stuff like that. That will be on the 11th of November. From all of us here at Model Railroading Live, we want to thank you for tuning in, because if you guys weren't tuning in, we'd be talking to dead air. Thank you, John, for your production skills and your directorial. Without you, we wouldn't be able to be on anyway at all. So thank you. And thank you out there in the community. You take care. God bless. And we'll see you on the radio. Bye-bye.